Hey, this is Kevin DDR, and I'm checking in with my Tetris the Grandmaster 1 race submission video for SGDQ 2017. The goal here is to have a 8-way race, which sounds ridiculous, but to make it clear, you only actually need 4 setups for an 8-way race because each board handles 2 players at once. So it would be 2 players on 4 setups for a total of 8, much like they do at the Masters tournament at Pier 21 Kodaira in Japan, which is probably the largest and most, prestigious Tetris tournament out there. Or rather, Tetris the Grandmaster tournament. So, without further ado, Tetris the Grandmaster. It's an arcade game made by Eureka, the developer of Street Fighter EX and the Street Fighter EX series. It was released in 1997 in Japan. Never saw an overseas release and never saw... Well, it did see one console port much later, but the console port barely counts as a TGM game. It's severely butchered in order to meet some licensing requirements. So the first thing you'll notice me doing at the start of this game is stacking all the way up to the top of the screen. The reason why I do this is because in this game, unlike the later games in the series, there is no what we call sonic drop, which lets you just drop the block immediately to the top of the stack without locking it. In fact, there is no hard drop either. There is only a locking soft drop. So in order to reduce the time spent during low gravity, dropping pieces to the bottom of the playfield, you stack all the way up to the top and then hopefully clear down when the gravity is much faster. So a couple other techniques that are kind of important in this game, and I mean are important in the entire series, but I'll mention now, are IRS, which is initial rotation system, which basically means that before a piece comes out, if you're holding a rotation button, the piece will spawn in that rotation. It can be very important for getting yourself out of some tricky situations, and you know, again, it's just an optimization as well. But it does have some practical applications in terms of, you know, avoiding your piece getting caught in a one wide well or something like that. So now the actual best thing to do in low gravity is to clear triples instead of clearing Tetrises, because the triple doesn't lower your stack by as much, and it also doesn't require you to drop an eyepiece to the bottom of the stack, or rather the bottom of the well. So I tried to do that a few times, but again, it's quite risky, and even at a very high level, you don't necessarily see players doing that. So the gravity increases slightly up to level 200, at which point it just resets back to the original, you know, extremely low value. So if you're not stacked up quite high at level 200, you really do lose a lot of time. I was maybe a little low in this run, but the rest of it went well enough that it kind of didn't matter. But again, I mean, halfway up the field is not, you know, at that point we're talking about maybe losing like, I don't know, 5 seconds or something like that. Maybe even less, you know, definitely not like 15 seconds or more like it would be if you were at the bottom of the playfield. So Tetris the Grandmaster 1, unlike the later games, the grading system is really simple. It basically just comes down to how many points you have. You can actually see it says next grade at, you know, X amount of points. Unlike the later games in the series, there's no kind of hidden grade system or anything that determines your grade. It's just a pure point value. And of course, clearing more than one line at once increases your points faster. Clearing combos, which is multiple consecutive line clears without a non-line clear placement between them, increases your point value faster. But this is kind of all a non-issue because the requirements for grade in this game are so much easier than they are in TGM2 and 3 that more or less if you finish the game and don't incredibly, you know, don't totally blow it, you will get the GM grade. The time requirement is a little harder. You have to finish the game by getting to level 999 in 13 minutes and 30 seconds. And that requirement I have seen quite a few players actually not reach on their first game that made it to 999. But the grade, I mean, you can miss it if you have a, you know, the difference, I guess what I'm trying to say is that a good player will never miss it in getting to 999, or at least very, very rarely miss it outside of a tournament situation. Unlike in TGM2 and TGM3, where, you know, the GM requirements are a little more stringent, and even a really good game can miss them if it's at all inconsistent. So this run, actually, looking back at it now, has some pretty shockingly bad parts. I'm amazed that the time came together as well as it did, given this sort of mess we created here. Now, the biggest time loss in TGM1, apart from, not stacking up at the start of the game, usually comes down to just pretty much a linear amount of how many non-Tetris line clears you make. Because the line clear animation is super long. It's 30 frames. And so, combining that with the delay between pieces and all of that stuff, basically every time you don't clear, every time you clear a single, that's like 41 frames or whatever gone. So, you really want to stick to Tetris's exclusively, because just reducing the amount of line clear animations that have to play throughout the game is a major source of time save. Additionally, you want to place pieces as quickly as possible, and that does save a lot of time, especially at a high level. But I think for beginners, not even beginners, but experienced players too, up until a quite high level, I would say the major time optimization comes from just not clearing singles. So if you look at some of the best players in the world, you'll see them set up these just insane overhangs and stuff that looks suicidal. Stuff that looks like their game is just going to be over when they do it, or it looks like they're just trying to intentionally mess up their stack. But it's not. The reason why they're doing it is because they basically have no other choice if they want to play quickly. It's that they know they have to get Tetrises in order to beat their record. And you'll just see some wild stuff as a result. Now, it should be clear that you don't necessarily have to do that, but quite often you kind of do have to do it. There's a lot of situations that the game can throw you into where if you want to have a fast time, you're just going to have to do some crazy stuff. Another thing that's important to note is that TGM1's randomizer is a little more random. Well, definitely way more random than the third game in the series, and significantly more random than the second game in the series. It can kind of hose you in some situations and throw you into really rough stuff that you can't easily get out of, TGM2, granted, can do that as well, but TGM1 is a particularly bad offender. So here we are coming into level 750-ish. The time here is quite good. I aim for roughly 55 seconds in every section from level 500 onwards, because the speed, unlike the later games in the series, the timings of the lock delay and the delay between pieces and the line clear animation, it's all static the entire game. The only thing that changes is the gravity. And from level 500 onwards, it's already at its highest speed. So here you can see I'm at grade S9, and it'll say next grade at question mark points. I think the requirement is either 126 or 128,000, which I've already met. You can only barely see it because it's chopped off. But yes, I've already met the GM score requirement. So, or rather, grade/score requirement. So the only thing left to do now is just make it to the end of the game and don't die. And I think, yeah, at this point I kind of knew that we were on pace for a personal best, and maybe got a little bit nervous, but that's just how this game is. Part of the brutality of TGM1, by the way, is just that it's a longer game than TGM2 and TGM3, and so much of the game is spent just like waiting for a piece to come out. At least for me, I get really anxious. TGM2, there's kind of not enough time. You're just playing so fast. There's no time to really get nervous. But TGM1, after every placement, you're second guessing yourself a little. So I think at this point, my personal best was either 925 or 926. So coming in there at 830 at level 900 was like, oh god, like I basically need an absolutely perfect section, and I need to stack all the way down to the bottom of the screen in order to, optimize my time fully. And I knew that there was just a possibility of me breaking my record. And of course, that's a beautiful feeling. So here we go. We're almost there. And yeah, as I said, even kind of, it's tough because there's a little bit of a balance between clearing, you know, singles and doubles and trying to stack all the way to the bottom of the playfield at the end of your game. And I messed it up pretty horribly, but just pulled it together enough to get a new personal best, 9 minutes 23, which I feel is a very good time. I think kind of in the Japanese TGM1 scene, which there is sort of just a dedicated scene for TGM1, I think 920 is considered really the benchmark of kind of a very, very top tier player. You know, the world record being 848, which is insane. But 920-ish is, you know, a very, very good time. So I was really happy with this. One day I would like to improve it kind of down to sub 920, but this run felt really good to me. So anyway, that's Tetris the Grandmaster 1. I hope you enjoyed it. And I have one more video to record, the 2-player 1-controller video. So I'll get going on that with Aperture Grills, and we will see you later. Bye-bye.